All right, it's Saturday. Tomorrow is the Steelers-Browns. Steelers are coming off the bye. And, AFC's wide open right now. Bills just lost. Chiefs losing. Jaguars are 4-1. Then we got the Browns. They're keeping it close with the Vikings there in London. And, the Vikings were there for 2 weeks, and they probably should have been pretty prepared for that game. So we're going to be getting into a little preview of this game here, Steelers versus Browns. And we're going to see what's going to possibly transpire and how the Steelers can possibly, what we think they're going to do with this game here. But first, we're going to start off with some questions from our Spotify comments. They've been chilling in the queue for a week or two now. We'll get those done. These are Chris's comments. So, from a few weeks ago, this is the newest one. We'll start with the newest one. Herbig over Highsmith. I'm pretty sure that was on one of Amir's episodes. I don't know Amir's full opinion on that because it's just me for this episode. But I'd say that, with how Herbig has been playing, I think he's earned I think he's earned the right to be on the field a lot more. Obviously, Highsmith's getting paid more, and also he's coming off this high ankle sprain, so he's obviously not going to be on the field a lot. But they're probably going to be making up some packages to get Herbig, Highsmith, and Watt on the field at the same time. And possibly in the future, you might see, maybe the Steelers might ship off Highsmith for some other, weapon on offense. I'd be curious to see what goes on with that. I think this week is going to be telling with what roles are going to be like. Not entirely because Highsmith needs to get back up to game speed, but I do think Herbig has been showing some good things. I just don't think he's the best against the run. And now, these two are from about 2 weeks ago. Chris asked, does giving up no sacks mean that much? Not entirely. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has been, getting the ball off pretty quickly. And that kind of answers his second question that was in that one comment is, pocket size and how much time Rodgers has in the pocket. Yeah, obviously he does not have a lot of time. They're not throwing it deep. We'll see how that can work this week because, the Browns have a pretty decent pass rush with Myles Garrett being one of the best edge rushers in the league. So we'll see with that. But, yeah, no sacks doesn't mean entirely a lot. It's a step forward, but it's also with the Steelers scheme, it's not a big, giant deal. And then Chris's fourth question, who should get fourth pass catcher reps? Darnell Washington, Roman Wilson. Definitely Washington. We kind of saw that last week with how he was playing in there with the in those jumbo sets, pretty much as our second or second extra tackle in there. So that was, Washington's going to have a bigger role than Roman Wilson. And we'll talk about Roman Wilson's role in this game coming up here soon. And then where does Skoranek land in my pass catching depth chart? He's probably above Roman Wilson, but below Darnell Washington. I think Scotty Miller is a little bit higher than Skoranek, but Skoranek probably offers the best blocking ability from receivers in there. But those are your questions, Chris. Sorry for them to be answered super late. I'm not too quick to check those Spotify comments. But we're going to get into this Browns-Steelers preview for Week 6 here. So obviously, Steelers are coming off that good, strong start, 3-1. They got the early bye week after that nice Ireland game with that good win over the Vikings, a little closer than what we wanted it to be. But looking at Cleveland in the past, Steelers are 23-1 versus the Browns at Acrisure since 2001. The only loss would be that wild card game from a couple years ago, Pouncey's last game, the year before Big Ben retired. So not a big fan of that, but obviously we've beaten them more recently at home as well. Turnover differential, Steelers got +7. That's best in the AFC North, so that'll be a good thing to look into, especially with that rookie quarterback. But, Steelers have had some offensive struggles. They're 29th overall, 31st in rushing. But I think they're turning that around as we saw with that Ireland game with those big jumbo sets there with Washington and Anderson coming in there for those extra blocking sets. And then defensive inconsistencies. They are ranked 30th against the pass, and they're 20th overall. They're not too bad in the run game. I'm pretty sure they're ranked 17. But we're still looking at, how is this going to go through? We'll get quick odd notes here. Steelers are 5.5-point favorites. The over/under's 38.5, and Pitt leads the series all time, 82-65-1. And obviously, the game is Sunday, October 12th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time at Acrisure Stadium. You can watch on CBS and Paramount Plus. So we're getting our Steelers storyline. So obviously, Rodgers, he's not looking too bad. People were doubting him coming into the season just because of age, but 8 touchdowns to 3 picks in the first 4 games isn't too bad. We've seen some not so good play from him, but I think he's obviously the best, option the Steelers have at this moment. And then Metcalf, he's starting off pretty good. So far, he's got 261 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. And I'd say the big concern with this Steelers offense is that offensive line. They're starting to get a little more cohesive. They've looked better, especially in that run game last week or 2 weeks ago against the Vikings. But they're going to be playing against Myles Garrett and like one of the better ranked defenses, especially against a run in the league. So I'm curious how that's going to pan out here. Peyton Wilson, Roman Wilson. Obviously, Peyton Wilson's looked better than Roman Wilson. We haven't seen much from Roman Wilson, but Peyton Wilson has looked nice. He's getting that NFL speed. He's been a little inconsistent in coverage lately, and in the run game. So hopefully he can fully get there. This year is supposed to be his big, comeback or step up to speed the year. But hopefully he'll get there. Linebacker play hasn't been entirely the best in my opinion, but hopefully, we still got room to improve. They're coming off of bye weeks. Hopefully they're pretty fresh. And we got Watt. He's got 3 sacks the last 2 games. He had that pick against the Vikings. He's starting to warm up. First couple games he was a little bit of a non-factor, but he was pretty good in the run game. But Mike Tomlin, per the usual Mike Tomlin, he wants more execution post-bye and some better discipline. But we'll look at some Steelers injuries right here. Calvin Austin, he's confirmed out. That came out last night. Jalen Ramsey's questionable. He was full at practice yesterday, but the Steelers do play again on Thursday against the Bengals, so they might look to rest him just to have him ready for that game since it's a quick turnaround. Highsmith, he's supposed to be back, but with a smaller play count because he's been out for quite some time. Warren, supposed to be back. He's been full. Same with Porter. He's going to be back. He might not be featured super heavily, but he's going to be a pretty good, get back for this Steelers defensive back room. But that's about it with the Steelers right now. The Browns, they've been making some moves, making some trades. They traded Joe Flacco to the Bengals. Browns got a 5th-round pick coming up in the draft. And then they traded Greg Newsome for Tyson Campbell with the Jaguars, so that might be a little bit beneficial for the Steelers there. And rookie QB Dillon Gabriel, the lefty, wasn't too big on him in the draft, but he's taken over as the starter. Shedeur is the backup quarterback, so we'll see how that goes. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Shedeur come in here at some point, just based off of Gabriel's performance. I don't think he's going to struggle against the Steelers defense. And then Judkins, that's the big thing with their offense, I'd say. Judkins, 347 yards, 4.8 per carry. Did pretty good against the Vikings last week, and he's only played 3 games, and he's averaging over 100 a game. So I'm liking Judkins. He looks good. I'm not liking it for a matchup against the Steelers, but they're getting some better guys back for the run defense, especially with Highsmith. So I think that'll be a good test to really see where this rush defense is at. But the Browns defense, they're ranked pretty high this year. 2nd overall, they're 1st versus the run, and 4th against the pass here. It's going to be a real test to see if this offense is legit. I'd like to see this run defense get going, but if it's the 1st ranked run defense in the league, I'm a little sketched out and we'll see how that turns out. But obviously Myles Garrett's going to be their key guy with this defense, and especially if they moved on from Greg Newsome, they brought in a new guy like Tyson Campbell. Maybe if Tyson Campbell's playing a good bit this week, maybe target him because he's not really too familiar with this Browns defense. I'm curious how that'll go. But we do have some key matchups. This is probably the most interesting one. Broderick Jones versus Myles Garrett. This is going to be his first test against Myles Garrett. Not feeling great. hopefully they shift over some guys to help him out with that. Broderick hasn't been the best. I don't think he's been absolutely terrible, but you obviously want better out of him because he's in his third season now, playing where he's supposed to be most comfortable, and he hasn't looked the best. He's not terrible, but I think him against Myles Garrett's going to be a clear mismatch here in this game. Hopefully Rodgers has enough time. They'll probably be moving around quickly. And you got TJ Watt versus Jack Conklin. I think Jack Conklin's not really been, the best tackle this season, so I think TJ Watt's going to have a pretty good matchup if he's not getting chipped and chunked over there at the edge spot. You got Porter versus Jerry Jeudy. And I don't think Jerry Jeudy's anything insane. But I think the biggest one is going to be this front seven versus Judkins. How can this run defense stop Judkins? He's looked pretty hot with these past 3 weeks, and I think it's going to be a little interesting. And then how's Rodgers going to adjust to this Jim Schwartz pressure schemes? Rodgers has been talking about it with the media here for his last media availability. So hopefully Rodgers is a pretty smart quarterback, so I think he's going to be able to dissect what's going on and be able to get it out quick. I think that's going to be the main scheme here, and be able to see when they are sending pressure and when they're not. They have some decent disguises over there in Cleveland. So we got our Steelers keys to win here. I think it's going to be a quick passing game, especially with the heat and the pressure they send, especially with Myles Garrett being part of that heat. Granted, Rodgers has been probably, if not the quickest quarterback to release the ball. So I think it'll be interesting how they'll go with that. You could see the Browns even not want to send heat, so then they can mess with some potential Steelers schemes. But I'm curious what they're going to do. I think it's going to be most beneficial if they focus on this quick game and try and replace pressure with routes, slant routes, drag routes, stuff like that. And with the Browns, they're first against inside runs, but they're 14th against outside runs, stretch zones, outside zone runs. So maybe we'll see the Steelers focus on some outside zone runs, some stretch plays. I'm not too big a fan of their, toss plays because they take so long to develop. But if there's a little bit of weakness for the Browns' outside zone runs, I think the Steelers should focus on those, and we'll see, Warren and Gainwell get some cracks at it. Maybe we'll see some Caleb Johnson. He was pretty good at the outside zone runs in college, so maybe that's part of the Steelers' schemes. I'm not entirely sure because they don't have too much confidence in that. And I think the big thing on defense is confuse this rookie QB, get at him, get him flustered. I'd say let's hope to keep him in over Shedeur because I think Shedeur is more of a wild card. Granted, he is a lot more reckless, so you might get some more turnovers with that. But I think Gabriel is going to be easier to tear apart. He's like 5'11", lefty. His arm's pretty small, so I think he's a pretty decent, he's probably an okay game manager type. But I think if you can keep him in the game instead of Sanders and kind of get him a little messed up there, and obviously win the turnover battle, I think they can with this rookie quarterback. Just confuse him, get him under pressure, get him flustered. I think they'll be able to do that. And lastly, I want to bring up this report I was reading. I was hearing on the radio. You'd think Calvin Austin being out this week, Roman Wilson would be the next guy up. But reports from practice are saying Scotty Miller's the one that's taken most of the snaps. I'm not entirely surprised. I think it just comes down to mental preparedness and just experience with Roman Wilson. I don't think he fully believes in himself. And, with Rodgers, he probably prefers these older receivers that know where to be when these plays get a little broken down. And Roman Wilson probably doesn't entirely know where to go. I'd like to see him get a role, but I'm not entirely sure he's going to have one this week. It'd be nice to see him have a little bit of a breakout, but I'm not too confident in Roman Wilson just based off of what I've been hearing. And other roster news, we'll end off with it here, and then I'll have my prediction for the game. They brought in Isaiah Simmons for a workout, the Steelers, linebacker, former first-round pick. He's like a hybrid safety linebacker. I don't think they'll sign him. If they do, it'll be for some practice squad stuff. But he obviously former top 10 overall pick, and he's not on a roster right now, so he's not very established in the league. And he had a good bit of time to try and establish himself, and he's not really done so. So it's not looking good for him. And then I don't know if you guys saw the news, Traylon Burks, he's cleared off, injured stuff, maybe potentially someone worth bringing in. Obviously, didn't really do too well in the Titans, but, potentially a guy to bring in some more depth at the receiver spot. I'm curious to see if anything will happen with that after this week and if the Calvin Austin void can be filled, because I think he's honestly a pretty useful piece to this offense with his ability to get open. But I'm going to end it off here with my prediction. I'm going to go 31-13 Steelers. I think they're going to be able to crack this run game open, and it's going to really just open up this whole offense. I'd like to see the Steelers be able to pass deep and get some guys involved, but I think they're going to live in that big jumbo set and really expose this Browns run defense, especially going to the outside where they're a little bit weaker. So that's my prediction, 31-13 Steelers. Having some high hopes. This AFC and AFC North is wide open, so if the Steelers can continue to stay hot and rack up these wins, I think it's going to be a pretty good looking season. I just hope they can, if they get hot, they can stay hot. They don't have to look perfect, but they can continue to stack upon these wins and fix their mistakes. I think it's going to be a pretty decent looking Steelers team. We just got to see if they can get more well-rounded on offense with being able to spread the field. And that is going to wrap it up for this Steelers preview episode. We'll see who does the reaction episode. It might be me or Amir. I didn't do the one last week, so I'm kind of feeling like I should do the one for that. But that's going to be it. Let's go Steelers. Have a good rest of your weekend. Hopefully they can get a dub tomorrow. Have a good one.